It's time to reach for the stars. Well, the moon at least. Hey crew, I'm your host Brian Rollins, and this is episode 227 of the Dorky, Geeky, Nerdy Trivia Podcast. This week we've got Apollo program trivia. 30 questions about the NASA program to get a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth. If this is your cup of Tang, be sure to check out the Astronomy trivia episode way back in Season 1 that we did to honor the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing. You can find it and all our past episodes at dorkygeekynerdy.com. That covers our usual business, so let's launch this show. The Dorky Round. Number 1. What was the first lunar mission to land on the moon? Apollo 11. Number 2. Who was the first human to step onto the moon? Neil Armstrong. Number 3. Who was the second human to step onto the moon? Buzz Aldrin. Number 4. What 2019 TV series gave us an alternate history version of the Apollo missions? For All Mankind. In it, the Soviets beat the US to the moon, thus altering the space race for decades. Number 5. What U.S. president kicked off the race to the moon with a speech in 1961? John F. Kennedy. Number 6. In 1975, an Apollo capsule was used to dock with what Soviet spacecraft? Soyuz. Number 7. What rocket launched the Apollo missions into space? The Saturn V rocket. Number 8. Which Apollo mission had a severe problem with one of its oxygen tanks en route to the moon? Apollo 13. Number 9. Who was president when Apollo 11 landed on the moon? Richard Nixon. Number 10. What animal can be found on the Apollo 11 mission patch? An eagle. The Geeky Round. Number 1. What was the final Apollo mission? Apollo 17. Number 2. Starting November 16, 2022, what NASA program succeeded the Apollo program? The Artemis program. Number 3. Apollo 15 was the first to use an LRV. What's the LRV? Lunar Rover Vehicle. It allowed astronauts to drive around the moon at up to 8 miles per hour. Number 4, which was the first manned Apollo mission? Apollo 7. Shira, Cunningham, and Ezel made the first live televised broadcast from space during the mission. Number 5. Apollo 11's lander was named the Eagle. What was the command module called? Columbia. It's off display now, but will be brought back to the Air and Space Museum in D.C. soon. Number 6. What is the technical term for moon dust? Lunar regolith. Number 7. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Robert B. Chaffee were members of which Apollo crew? Apollo 1. All 3 would die in an accident while testing the command module. Number 8. Who was the backup commander for Apollo 11? Hint: he was the commander for Apollo 13. Jim Lovell. Number 9. Dr. Harrison H. Schmitt, a member of the Apollo 17 crew, was the first NASA astronaut scientist. What was his specialty? Geology. Number 10. All told, how many men have walked on the moon with the Apollo program? "12. 2 from each of the 6 successful landings. The nerdy round. Number 1. What experiment, left on the moon by Apollos 11, 14, and 15, are still running? The Lunar Laser Ranging Retroreflector. It allows scientists to accurately measure the distance to the moon at regular intervals. Number 2. What happened to Apollo 12 at 36 and 52 seconds after liftoff? It was struck by lightning. Number 3. The unmanned Apollo 6 was a bit of a mess on its launch April 4th, 1968. It received very little press coverage because what else happened that day? Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Number 4. Which Apollo mission got NASA sued for First Amendment violations? Apollo 8. Madalyn Murray O'Hair sued NASA because the astronauts read from the Book of Genesis. The case was dismissed. Number 5. The American flags placed on the moon came from which department store? Sears. Unlike a lot of things NASA uses, these are just store-bought flags. Number 6. As of 2023, who is the last person to walk on the moon? Gene Cernan. He passed away in 2017 and often remarked how he hated being the last person to walk on the lunar surface. Number 7. What World War II-era aircraft carrier retrieved the Apollo 11 crew from the Pacific Ocean? The USS Hornet. The ship was retired and is now a museum in Alameda, California. Number 8. How many Apollo missions were initially planned? 20. The last 3 never happened. At least one Saturn V rocket was repurposed to fly up Skylab. Number 9. I mentioned Apollo 11's Columbia. Which other command module shares a name with a space shuttle? Apollo 15's command module, Endeavour. Number 10. When Kennedy gave his famous moonshot speech in 1961, how many people had actually been into space? Just 2, Yuri Gagarin and Alan Shepard. And that's Splashdown. Everyone make it back okay? With the new Artemis program underway, I've noticed an uptick in interest in Apollo. I was born 3 years after the last Apollo mission, so I'm extra excited to see humans go back to the moon in my lifetime. If there's any old-timers out there, please send me feedback on what it was like to see these live. I'll be back here next week with another episode. Here's a quick clue. Who is the second most nominated person for Academy Awards after Walt Disney? It'll come to you, don't worry. This person's been mentioned numerous times on this show. See you back here next Wednesday. This was episode 227 of the Dorky, Geeky, Nerdy Trivia Podcast. The music is by Jason Shaw at audionautics.com. This podcast was written, produced, and hosted by me, Brian Rollins. Come find me at thevoicesinmyhead.com. Thanks for listening. 'Tis the season to be podcasting. Stay inside with a warm beverage and a hot microphone. If you're interested, Spotify can help you out. They've got a platform that lets you make one, distribute it, and earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So you've already got the equipment necessary to start recording today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple, Google, and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are an excellent way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's completely free. I switched Dorky, Geeky, Nerdy over to Spotify for Podcasters, and I haven't regretted it. The analytics are fantastic, and the new tools for hosting and updating the feed are way more than I could do self-hosting. Now, it's your turn. Head to podcasters.spotify.com and read all about it, then let me know what you're podcasting all about. Long before the summer of love, pride parades down Market Street, and the fight for marriage equality, San Francisco in 1953 was all about the Red Scare, FBI investigations, yellow journalism run amok, and the ladies who play mahjong over tea. In The Unexpected Heiress, Private Detective Nick Williams is called in to see his lawyer and friend Jeffrey Klein, whose mystery client, under contract to Metro, was just arrested at the Kit Kat Club on Polk Street, but somehow got off with a bench warrant. Jeffrey wants to know who in the police department worked things behind the scenes for the star of the upcoming blockbuster, It Was Raining Then. Meanwhile, a late-night phone call from his estranged father sends Nick into a tailspin, and a family secret, along with a lot of other things better kept hush-hush, are all splashed on the front pages of the Daily News. It ain't pretty. In the end, for Nick and his lover, a strapping firefighter named Carter Jones, it's actually the beginning of a whole new way of doing business. The Unexpected Heiress by Frank W. Butterfield is book 1 in the Nick and Carter series and is available now on Audible and iTunes.